Welcome, everybody. I'm Rachel, here again to offer words of support, healing, hopefully wisdom, and love. This is part of my series reflecting on shamanism and its role in the world today. I've been having conversations in the past week with some wonderful friends and colleagues, women, who were called in their lives to a spiritual path, this earth-based, mystical, spiritual path that is called shamanism. And I go back to offer you again my definition of shamanism, which is an emerging therapeutic and spiritual movement that has been gaining momentum for many decades and that has arisen out of the generous offerings of Native teachers, indigenous peoples from around the world, and that has then been merged in some ways, small or large, with Western, the movement, the desire of people in the West to connect with a spirituality that is earth-based, star-based, and that embraces the consciousness that infuses everything, from Mother Earth to the stars, to every animal, to every cell, every molecule of this creation. That being said, I want to acknowledge as well that there are many indigenous peoples, groups, tribes, nations that do embrace the word shamanism as a way to describe their spiritual and cultural ways. And of course, there are some that actually reject this word. And I've said a lot about that. But I just want to make sure that as I talk about this, that about the fears that these women and I talked about being upfront and forward, out in the open, about our spirituality. I want you to understand how I see this. So I have been practicing shamanism in some way, whether I called it that or not, for about 30 years. And really, in a way, it was just a natural outgrowth of, the love that I felt from the earth and for the animals, and for a knowing, a feeling of the consciousness of all, the awakeness, the aliveness, the awareness, and of the ways in which I, as a child, a teenager, a younger person, would go out into nature when I was troubled or hurting, or was simply seeking to soak in some peace. And this was not to the exclusion, I want to make very clear in terms of my spiritual path, this was not to the exclusion of understanding that there is a creator, a spirit that I talk about as the spirit within, through, and around all that is, that infuses all of creation. I simply really wanted to, I did believe that, I knew that. I knew it was all one, I guess is what I'm getting to right now. It was all one. It wasn't either or. It wasn't like, for me, there was a God up here in the heavens and there was this earth plane that was just inanimate, materialistic, I saw it all as one, and I felt and knew from being a young child of the immanent force of living energy within it. And then, of course, as I've told in other stories, I ended up meeting my Cherokee teacher when I was about 32, and eventually then went and studied with Alberto Villoldo, who was trained by the medicine people of the Andes, of the Q'ero Nation and others, and then now I'm studying with Puma Freddy Singona Quispe of the rainbow lineage of Chincheros of the Q'ero Nation in Peru. I am a shaman, which basically means that I am a healer and that I work with the powers and forces of nature, of great cosmic beings, in order to then help the people in need who come to me. And I work with the living energy of the energy body, of the chakras, and the living energy of what is moving within the deep subconscious and within the soul of an individual. So to go back to this fear, I have a friend in France who is a shamanic practitioner. She has been very deeply involved in the study of women's moon traditions in France, and she was telling me that in France the prejudice and the fear of these beautiful non-Christian, I mean, I don't even want to call them non-Christian, these beautiful earth-based and mystical, esoteric spirituality focused in this case upon the divine feminine and that powerful energy of love and light. And that even in the media, these groups are called cults. People, they're warning people that they're manipulating them and trying to get money out of them. I've had many, many clients over the years talk to me about how they were raised in Christian, by their families in Christianity of various different denominations, and that when their family members found out that they were following this spiritual way, they said, oh, they were doing the work of the devil, right? So there is that fear out there, and we know that through many hundreds of years in Europe, and eventually then when Europeans spread across the many continents of Africa and Asia, the Pacific Rim, the Americas, that they came with their idea that they were at the pinnacle of civilization, that they had a manifest destiny to dominate all the peoples in all the world, and that the native peoples, the local inhabitants of all these places, these continents, were primitive, were not even human, and that Christianity was the only way and was the highest way. And therein lays the seed of this insidious soul sickness, as I've called it, that led to all this prejudice and also murder and genocide and stereotypes and misunderstandings that essentially have arisen out of ignorance. One of my goals as a shamanic healer and spiritual teacher, and even I would say as a shaman, which is a word that I haven't really used for myself or embraced for myself until very recently, preferring to say I'm a shamanic healer, for instance. But I want to embrace the word because I am a woman. I'm a highly intelligent, highly educated woman. Not that the education makes a difference, but I'm deeply researched in the history of humanity, in religion, in cultures, as an anthropologist and a folklorist. And I don't go into anything very lightly because I go in with the mind of a social scientist. I go in with a curiosity. It took me many years to even really understand why I was so called to a spirituality that I was basically learning, tapping into through Native American teachers. So I think that I want to acknowledge the fear that you may feel. And I'm also here working to elevate our conversation, not just among those of us who follow this path, but out in the mainstream world, to elevate shamanism so that it is recognized to be as legitimate, as deep, as rich as any other religion on the planet, of the five, what are called the five major religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Because in fact, though in the West, we have always spoken of the five major religions, or sometimes six, because Taoism is sometimes included in that list. There are more human beings on the planet today who are steeped in an earth-based, mystical spirituality. Call it shamanism, called earth-based spirituality, or whatever the names or words that each group, each nation, each tribe, each individual uses to describe their way. There are billions of people on this planet, many more than each of the individual so-called 5 or 6 major religions. This is important to know, because despite the efforts of Europeans initially, then their descendants, and then those who were among the conquered peoples, who they Christianized, who then turned around to, who were led to believe and conditioned to believe that their religion, their culture, their spirituality was primitive and less than and superstitious and all these terms. Despite that, this human way of connecting in to the divine through communion with the powers and forces of nature, with the consciousness and heart of Mother Earth, with the star nations, and with the spirit within, through, and around all that is, by whatever name, this creational life force, love force. There are far more people who follow that way. And maybe they incorporate elements of Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Judaism into their way. That is the nature of human cross-fertilization, where we adapt and mold. We take from, those things that resonate with us. We are never standing still. We are never standing still. In the same way that my connection to Jesus, feeling him as this loving, immanent, compassionate being, remains with me in my spiritual practice. So I want to inspire you when you are called to this way. I want to acknowledge your fear. I want to acknowledge how daunting it can be to think about coming out, stepping out, because of the possible rejection by your family or condemnations by family and friends or by your work colleagues. But I did it. I did it. Most overtly 15 years ago, when I basically hung up my shingle to be a shamanic healer and committed my life's work to this path, to what I'm doing today in this video. So have confidence in yourself. There is nothing, as long as you are not using energy to manipulate or harm others, as long as you are working in the light and you are seeking in all of your practice to live with an open heart and to be compassionate, to be kind, to reach for enlightenment, you are doing nothing wrong. You are doing nothing evil. You are, in fact, doing a great good for yourself, your family, your community, for humanity, for the planet. I don't care whether you pray to God or Allah or Yahweh or Creator or Spirit, I don't care whether you pray at all. I don't care. All I care about is that what is important is that you are seeking to work with light and love and kindness in your life. And that is the root of all religions. That's the root of all ways, spiritual ways. That's the core. That is the one seed. So have confidence and then have courage. For we are all working for the good. May it be so. Aho. Amen.